civil war in neighboring Sudan has fueled these tensions. Abiy is close to the United Arab Emirates, Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Tigray, a powder keg in the Horn of Africa. Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Tigray are at risk of descending into a new conflict only 4 years after the region's last major conflagration ended. While all sides appear wary of igniting a new war, simmering grievances, overblown rhetoric, and military preparations indicate that they are readying themselves for that eventuality. The risk of a new war involving Ethiopia, its neighbor Eritrea, and its northernmost Tigray region remains palpable just 3 years after the last round of deadly conflict. That war ended with the Tigrayans' defeat by a coalition including Ethiopia, Eritrea, and local forces, an alliance that disintegrated soon after a peace deal was inked in November 2022. Relations dipped further when Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed announced his intention to secure sovereign sea access for his landlocked country, which Eritrea fears he will try to achieve by invading. With Ethiopia and Eritrea at loggerheads, Addis Ababa accuses the leaders of the Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF, its foe in the last war, of forging a clandestine alliance with Eritrea. Tensions are running high as all sides prepare for a fight, though the huge costs of another conflict are helping hold them back. To stave off a descent into war, states in Africa, as well as international partners, should urgently establish back channels among Addis Ababa, Asmara, and the TPLF to address their differences. Today's jockeying among Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Tigray stems from the messy aftermath of the 2020 to 2022 war in Ethiopia's northeast. Hostilities broke out in November 2020 after tensions between Prime Minister Abiy, who had taken power in April 2018, and the TPLF came to a boil. The war pitted Tigrayan forces against a coalition including Ethiopian and Eritrean troops, as well as paramilitary forces from Ethiopia's Amhara and Afar regions. As in previous Ethiopian conflicts, the human toll of the battle was shockingly high, with tens of thousands killed and hundreds of thousands displaced. A peace agreement signed in Pretoria, South Africa, in November 2022 stilled the fighting, but opened new fault lines in its wake. A peace agreement signed in Pretoria, South Africa, in November 2022 stilled the fighting, but opened new fault lines in its wake. It left the TPLF weakened but still standing, laying out a vague roadmap for reintegrating Tigray into the Ethiopian Federation. Meanwhile, Abiy's wartime coalition crumbled. Both Eritrea and the Amhara felt let down by the peace deal. A network of Amhara militias rebelled against the federal government after an effort by Abiy to dismantle them. The brief rapprochement between Ethiopia and Eritrea also soured. Abiy's publicly stated quest to regain sea access for Ethiopia angered Eritrea, which regarded it as a threat to the Red Sea coastline that Ethiopia lost following Eritrea's 1993 independence. Ethiopia, for its part, accused its neighbor of redoubling its support for armed opposition groups and occupying Ethiopian territory in Tigray. The peace agreement also plunged the TPLF into bitter factionalism. A core of the front's senior leaders, often referred to as the Old Guard, turned against the deal, which had been signed when the TPLF's military was staring at defeat. They subsequently accused the new Tigray administration under Ethio-Eritrea, who represented the TPLF at the Pretoria talks, of allying with Abiy. In partnership with Tigrayan generals, they overthrew Getachew's administration in March 2025, forcing its leaders to flee to Addis Ababa. Ethiopian authorities and their Tigrayan allies in turn accused the TPLF's Old Guard, who had wrested back control of the movement, of forging common cause with Eritrea. A low-level intra-Tigrayan conflict, with the TPLF arrayed against an Addis Ababa-backed group, is now escalating. Meanwhile, fighting flared in Salemdi, a district claimed by both Tigray and its neighboring region of Amhara. In January, the TPLF sent forces into the area, where they clashed with federal troops and Amhara militias, raising the prospect that the TPLF might try to recapture better defended western Tigray, which remains under Amhara control. The federal government responded with drone strikes and a military buildup on Tigray's boundaries. These and other disputes including federal efforts to prevent the TPLF from participating in forthcoming elections, as well as pauses in Tigray's federal budget subsidies, are stoking animosity between Addis Ababa and the Tigrayan capital, Mekelle, as well as embittering relations between Ethiopia and Eritrea. Civil war in neighboring Sudan has fueled these tensions. Abiy is close to the United Arab Emirates, which in turn supports the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF, in Sudan's grinding conflict. Eritrea, for its part, has sided with the Sudanese army and the associated government. It has forged a relationship with another of the army's backers, Egypt, which happens to be a big rival of Addis Ababa's at present due to frictions over Nile River waters. The TPLF has also tilted toward the army's side in Sudan, with a rift also opening between the UAE and Saudi Arabia, which also favors the army. Horn of Africa politics are suffused with mistrust and apprehension about expanding conflict, while foreign mediation faces seemingly insurmountable challenges. Until now, all sides appear to have understood the appalling risks of outright war, which could cost many thousands of lives. Until now, all sides nonetheless appear to have understood the appalling risks of outright war, which could cost many thousands of lives and set off an unpredictable chain reaction throughout the region. While Ethiopia remains the stronger power, with a much larger population and economy, its military chiefs seem wary of initiating a new full-scale war with Eritrea, even as they go about boosting the preparedness of the armed forces. Even a limited campaign aimed at seizing an Eritrean seaport, most likely as Sab, could place Ethiopia in a wider conflict with a determined adversary. Abiy may also fear the economic consequences of international censure, especially the suspension of support from the International Monetary Fund, IMF. Asmara, for its part, is in defensive mode, is unlikely to start a major new conflict, at least not intentionally, given the existential threat that war with Ethiopia could pose. This time round, all the belligerent noises about the injustice of Ethiopia lacking its own seaport and the veiled threats to remedy it have come from Addis Ababa. As for Tigray, federal authorities may still be reluctant to resort to all-out force to remove the TPLF from power, despite the clashes in Salemti and its frustrations with the region's leaders. Instead, it could opt to weaken, divide, and contain the Tigrayan authorities. Tigray's rulers may also prefer to avoid another bout of direct confrontation with Addis Ababa, given the damage to Tigrayan forces done by the last war and the resistance of much of the region's exhausted population to fresh mobilization. Even so, the stakes are high and the flashpoints are numerous, making it imperative that Addis Ababa, Asmara, and the TPLF establish more effective communication. Contacts should aim at the very least at stopping any skirmish or misunderstanding from escalating. To achieve this end, the main African states involved in the 2022 peace agreement, Kenya, South Africa, and Nigeria, should work through the African Union to broker talks between the federal government and the TPLF. A first step would be to ease the tensions between the TPLF and its Addis Ababa-backed rival, the Tigray Peace Forces, and halt the buildup of proxy forces on both sides. Healing the Ethiopia-Eritrea rift will be harder, but more can be done to that effect. Major powers, including the U.S., the European Union, China, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and others, should reiterate that Ethiopian military action against Eritrea is unacceptable, while looking for ways to mediate discreetly between the sides. All those with access to Asmara from the Horn of Africa and beyond, including Kenya, Saudi Arabia, and China, should urge it to end its meddling in Ethiopia so as not to provoke a direct conflict that Eritrea does not want. Foreign powers could also engage in a candid discussion with Ethiopia and its neighbors about Addis Ababa's aspirations for more reliable sea access. Short of a devastating war, it is hard to see how Ethiopia will achieve the most ambitious versions of its demand for coastal territory. Still, the country's neighbors, especially Eritrea, Djibouti, breakaway Somaliland, Somalia, and Kenya, should be ready to talk with Ethiopia about how its legitimate concerns as a landlocked state might be addressed, including through diversifying its commercial port usage. While all sides appear to be preparing for a return of fighting, and ominous reports of troop movements in northern Ethiopia emerged in early February, The fact that at present no one seems to be seeking to start a new war offers hope that it can be averted.